And during this European Council, we have discussed the topic of immobilized Russian assets. We, the Commission, will come forward with a proposal, and we will focus prudently on the windfall profits from the immobilized assets of the Russian Central Bank.
This is my video update from Larnaca, Cyprus on this Saturday, midday, July the 1st. Let's talk about some news. And right now I am at the world famous Larnaca Salt Lake. Right across the lake in the distance, all the way out there in the distance, is the mosque where I did a video from about a week and a half ago. And right down that way, you can see a plane taking off right now, is the Larnaca International Airport, about a 5-minute drive from this spot. And across the way, about across the highway and maybe 5-10 minute walk, is Mackenzie Beach. But right now I am the only one here at the Salt Lake because I think I'm the only one crazy enough to come out here when it's something like 100 degrees here in Larnaca, plus 40 degrees Celsius. It is extremely hot right now, and so most people are down that way hanging out at the beach, which is the smart thing to do. But here we are at the Salt Lake, and we are going to talk about some news. And usually in the wintertime, if you come out here in the wintertime, the whole lake will be full of migratory birds and flamingos, and it's really beautiful when the flamingos are out here. But let's talk about pirates, not flamingos. Let's talk about pirates, and let's talk about the European Union and our favorite pirate, Ursula von der Pirate. Because the EU, they had some sort of meeting. I think it was like an EU Council meeting or a European Union leaders council meeting or something like that took place the other day. And the purpose of this meeting was to try and figure out a way to steal the Russian central bank frozen assets in Europe, which are hidden away in various countries in Europe. The interesting part about these frozen assets is that we haven't been told. I don't even think they know. I don't even think the EU elites know, but we haven't been told where these assets are located and the amount of these assets. I've heard numbers ranging from 28 billion euros all the way up to 300 billion euros, but no one really knows the exact amount of assets that we're talking about. But the European Union, they're trying to find a way to steal these assets. Seize, not freeze. Remember that phrase from Ursula a few months ago? The goal is to seize, not to freeze. And they're trying to find a way to steal these assets and then take these assets and hand them over to the Zelensky regime in Ukraine under the guise of these assets will be used for Ukraine's reconstruction, when we all know that these assets are going to be handed to Zelensky and then divvied up amongst the collective West elites. And my thinking on this is that they will enter Ukraine and leave Ukraine divided up and back in the pockets of all of these people. That's my guess as to what the real purpose of all of this is. And boy, do they want these assets. I mean, they have been trying now for 1.5 years to get their hands on these assets. And various EU member states, I believe Germany being one of them, has actually warned the European Union and Ursula von der Pirate not to go forward and steal these assets, because it is going to cause a whole lot of damage to the European Union financial system. What various member states are worried about is that once other countries and other very wealthy individuals and entities, once they see the European Union stealing the assets of Russia, well, they're going to pull out their money from the European Union as well. And this is going to damage the EU, it's going to damage the euro, and various EU member states are warning not to do this. And they can't really find a legal pathway to steal these assets either. They're having a very hard time trying to make this all legal. So what have they come up with? Well, according to Bloomberg, what the EU will do, instead of stealing these frozen assets, the EU will seek to tax sanctioned Russian central bank assets. According to Bloomberg, the plan would tax profits on blocked central bank assets. Questions remain if the plan would stand up to legal scrutiny. So not even taxing the frozen assets and then handing them over to Zelensky is legally sound. Doesn't look like that has a legal basis either. But that is the plan that the European Union and the EU leaders are going to go with for now, until they can find a way to steal the full amount of the Russian central bank frozen assets. It is expected that the assets of the Russian central bank frozen in Europe will bring about 3 billion euros of excess profits per year. More than half of these assets are in cash and on deposits, the rest in securities, which will be turned into cash as they are redeemed in the next 2 to 3 years. The European Commission is preparing to submit a more detailed proposal before the end of the summer. So this is going to be a type of, according to Bloomberg, it's going to be a type of windfall tax on profits generated by more than 300 billion euros of frozen Russian central bank assets. And according to Bloomberg, this windfall tax will aid Ukraine's reconstruction. Yeah, right. If you believe that this windfall tax money is going to go towards the reconstruction of Ukraine, well, then I've got a Salt Lake to sell you. So, yeah, that's what's happening with these frozen assets. Like I said, they've been trying to get after this money now for a year and a half, and they just can't figure out a way to get this money. And so they're moving on to the next best thing, which is to tax the profits, the interest generated from these frozen assets, and then to hand over the money to the Zelensky regime. And as I said just a few minutes ago, no one has actually put a number on an exact number on these assets. Bloomberg is saying 300 billion. 6 months ago, Bloomberg did a report and said that the EU is disappointed because the actual amount of frozen assets is 28 billion. So that's a huge range. We've heard 28 billion. We've heard 300 billion. Which one is it? And where are these frozen assets? Are they in one country? Are they in Germany? Are they in the Netherlands? Are they in Spain? Are they here in Cyprus? Where exactly are all of these frozen assets? And is it in cash? Is it in securities? Is it a mix of all of these things? Bloomberg, they're kind of hinting at the amount, and they hint about what type of form these assets are in, but no one really knows. And it just seems to me like the European Union is just kind of making stuff up. They're just kind of coming up with numbers, kind of like the Pentagon and their accounting error of $6.2 billion. That's what it feels like to me. But Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, he came out the other day and he actually put out a video statement. But he came out the other day and he said, Hungary is not really so hip on the idea of sending more money to the Zelensky regime in Ukraine until we get some sort of audit as to where the 70 billion that we have sent Ukraine so far went. That is what Orban said in a statement and a video post that he made the other day. And Mr. Prime Minister of Hungary, I've got some bad news for you. The 70 billion euros that the EU sent to Ukraine, there is going to be no audit because that money is gone. It is gone like the Leopard tanks that were sent to Ukraine. It is gone like all of the other weapons that you sent Ukraine, like the Challenger tanks will soon be gone and they will be burnt by the Russian military. Well, this 70 billion has vanished. Poof. Gone. There are no 70 billion euros anymore to audit. Zelensky has bought his homes. Various other globalists and EU elite, I imagine that they have purchased their homes as well. And there is no 70 billion. Generals, Ukraine generals in Poland, generals from Lithuania, Latvia, NATO, and all of these people. Well, I'm sure they've all gotten their hooks into this 70 billion. Mr. Prime Minister, there is no 70 billion anymore. That's just the reality of the situation. So the Washington Post, they came out with an article yesterday, and they revealed, the WAPO revealed that CIA Director, Mr. Burns, the CIA head honcho, he made a secret trip to Kiev, another secret trip. How many secret trips does this guy take to Kiev? It seems like he's on a secret trip to Kiev every other week. What is a CIA director doing in Kiev all the time? Why are you there so often, Mr. Burns? Anyway, the CIA director, according to the WAPO, was on a secret trip to Ukraine, and in June, when he made that secret trip, he heard the plan for the war's endgame. During meetings in Kiev, William Burns was told of Ukraine's ambitious goal to retake territory and push Moscow into talks by the end of the year. So, do you want to know what the plan is? What is the plan for Ukraine's victory that Mr. Burns was privy to? Well, I've got some good news for everybody that's watching this video. The Washington Post actually has the plan, and I'm going to read it out to you. Publicly, Ukrainian officials have expressed frustration with critics of the pace at which the counteroffensive has played out thus far. But in private, military planners in Kiev have relayed to Burns and others bullish confidence in their aim to retake substantial territory by the fall. Move artillery and missile systems near the boundary line of Russian-controlled Crimea, push further into eastern Ukraine, and then open negotiations with Moscow for the first time since peace talks broke down in March of last year, according to 3 people familiar with the planning. Russia will only negotiate if it feels threatened, said a senior Ukrainian official. Whether Ukraine can deliver on those plans on such a truncated timeline remains to be seen. The CIA declined to comment when asked for Burns' assessment of the offensive's perspectives. So, this is the plan that we have been hearing about for the past 3 months. There's really nothing new to this plan, is there? The Ukraine military makes its way to the Sea of Azov. It splits the Russian forces, and then it moves artillery into position. But the difference with this Washington Post plan compared to the previous plans that the collective West media has been telling us about is that there's no movement towards Crimea. The previous plans have always said that Ukraine will make its way to the Sea of Azov, They'll move artillery into position, and then they'll make their way to capture Crimea. And then once they've captured Crimea, that's when they'll negotiate with Russia. In this plan, what they're saying is that by the fall, not in 3 to 5 days like they were telling us a month ago, but by the fall, they're going to make their way to the Sea of Azov, and they're going to move all of their forces and their artillery into place, and then they're ready to negotiate with Russia. There's no capturing of Crimea anymore. So I think that's a key point to this Washington Post plan that CIA Director Mr. Burns was briefed on. So in Ukraine, we had the Spanish Prime Minister drop by and make a surprise visit to Kiev. I'm not sure if it was a surprise visit. Actually, it might have been a planned visit. So Sanchez made a planned visit to Kiev because he's there to meet with Zelensky, to deliver whatever messages he needs to deliver to Zelensky. And then he is slated to speak to the Ukraine parliament as well. The Spanish Prime Minister will address the parliament of Ukraine. Actually, I believe that Spain now holds the rotating presidency of the European Union. And Jungle Joseph Borrell, he put out a statement the other day, and he announced that some very important events are going to be happening in and around Ukraine. That is the word he used. The words he used. Very important events and developments are expected related to the conflict in Ukraine. And Borrell said that these developments will be military related as well as diplomacy related, though he didn't get into any specifics. So you've had a lot of leaders, Collective West leaders, over the last week or two visit Kiev. You have Borrell saying that some big things are going to happen. Zelensky was speaking to foreign reporters yesterday, and he said that the Collective West has been pushing Ukraine to make some territorial gains before the NATO conference in Vilnius. And once again, Zelensky talked about how this big counteroffensive is going to be very slow, but Ukraine will be successful, and they are making gains, though incremental gains, according to Zelensky, and it's going to be a long process. But he said that he's getting very frustrated with the Collective West constantly pushing him to make big gains before the NATO meeting. But Zelensky did tell the reporters that some big things are going to happen. And in Ukraine, I believe yesterday, they started holding drills for a possible nuclear disaster from the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. So something big is being cooked up. You have a lot of Collective West leaders making their way to Kiev. Obviously, they're talking about stuff. They're delivering messages. They're delivering certain plans or plots or schemes to the Zelensky regime. You have Zelensky telling reporters that he's getting a lot of pressure to make big moves. Oh, wow. Check that out. You have Zelensky telling reporters that he's getting a lot of pressure to make some big moves and to show some territorial gains. You have these drills that are underway for some sort of nuclear disaster. You have Ukraine military. They're starting to recruit military-aged men, just about anybody, actually, that they can get their hands on, from the west of Ukraine, from many cities and towns in the west of Ukraine, which is a big change of tactics. Before they were kind of pulling people from the center and from the east, center, and south of Ukraine, and now they're moving west because things are just not going well for the Ukraine military. They're running out of soldiers, and so now they're recruiting more and more people from the western part of Ukraine, which was an area that for the past year and a half was kind of off limits, except for the Transcarpathian Ukrainians of Hungarian origin. They were sent to the front lines like from day one. But you have all of these things happening, and you can just tell that something big is being cooked up. My feeling on all of this is that something is being planned for Zaporozhye. Whether it's successful, hard to tell. Who knows? The Russians obviously are aware of all of this, but they're trying to do something in the ZNPP. And if something does happen in the ZNPP, maybe with Storm Shadow missiles, maybe with ATACMS missiles that are coming to Ukraine, who knows? If something happens, then Zelensky obviously has a talking point for NATO to push them and to get boots on the ground because of Russia's sabotage of the ZNPP. That's how it will be presented. So you have something there. You do have reports that Ukraine is preparing a lot of soldiers to move in the direction of Zaporozhye, Kherson, Bakhmut, and they're just preparing a lot of forces to just throw into that direction, and just hope that they throw so many soldiers into the front lines, towards the front lines, that eventually this type of human wave tactic will get some breakthrough before the meeting in Vilnius, and then Zelensky will be able to go to the NATO member states and say, you see, I lost 20, 30,000, 40,000 men, but here you guys go. Here's your territory that I promised you. And then that would mean more money and more weapons, but not much of an army. So none of this stuff looks good for Ukraine or for the Ukraine military, but obviously they're very concerned with the Vilnius NATO meeting, and that's the date that they've set up to try and get something done, to try and make something happen, whether it's a false flag, whether it's some sort of human wave tactic to gain territory. Obviously, that July 11th or 12th date on the calendar is something that the collective West and the Zelensky regime is very concerned about. So, before I get to my clown worlds, let's talk about some quick stories. The first story I want to talk about has to deal with the multipolar system. Iran, I believe, has now been granted entry into the SCO. I think that's a done deal now. So that's some big news. Ethiopia actually applied to enter BRICS. Another country has applied to enter BRICS, which just shows that all the momentum is in favor of BRICS and in favor of the multipolar world, and not in favor of the collective West. Macron, he came out with a statement, and he said that the problem with the riots, the reason that France is undergoing these protests and these riots, is because of social media, not because of his leadership. This is according to a statement from Macron. He actually blames social media for these problems. And Putin had a telephone call with Indian Prime Minister Modi, and Modi said that he fully supports Russia. He said that the mutiny from Wagner has not affected India's relation with Russia whatsoever. And then they talked about business. They talked about trade and other business dealings that they have. So after Modi went to to meet with Biden, and Biden was all excited because he thought that he had Modi on side. And then he called Xi Jinping a dictator because he thought that he had India aligned with the United States. Well, Modi, he calls Putin. They have a good conversation, and they just reaffirmed Russia and India's commitment to work together on a diplomatic and business level. And then we have an article from The Guardian, which has the title, Belarusian Exiles, Hopes Dashed as Lukashenko Boasts of Saving Putin. And The Guardian and a lot of collective West media, they are now reporting that that as the Prigozhin mutiny was unfolding, there were plans put in place to do the exact same thing in Belarus. And because the Prigozhin mutiny failed, the regime change that was being planned in Belarus, well, that never got off the ground. So I think you can start to see why it was so important for Lukashenko to be brought in and to mediate the entire Prigozhin incident, because for Lukashenko, it meant that if he could put an end to Prigozhin's mutiny, then he could also prevent the planned regime change that was being cooked up in Belarus. And the collective West is now they're openly admitting that that was indeed the plan. Russia and then Belarus. So let's do some clown worlds. And let's start off with a clown world coming from Zelensky. They always come back. Follow the flamingos at larnacaregion.com. Follow the flamingos. They do always come back, don't they? So Zelensky, he gave his nightly TikTok, Instagram video speech. And in this video speech, he marked an anniversary. Do you guys know what anniversary Zelensky was talking about? Anyone? Anyone know what anniversary Zelensky was celebrating yesterday? How about Snake Island? The Snake Island anniversary. That is what Zelensky was celebrating yesterday, and he actually tweeted about it. He said, today is the first anniversary of the liberation of Snake Island from the Russian invaders. It is one of our major victories. Remember, last year in the spring, no one expected from Ukraine that we would be able to implement, in particular, this fundamental defense task to provide security to Snake Island and therefore to a significant part of the Black Sea water area. But our soldiers did it. Russian terrorists needed Snake Island to destroy the entire south of our country, our beautiful ODYSEE and other cities. Our soldiers stopped them and drove them out of Snake Island. Propaganda via Volodymyr Zelensky, talking about the great victory at Snake Island. Never mind that Snake Island now is pretty much a no man's land. And it's actually, that whole area is actually the grain corridor, isn't it? So Snake Island really held no strategic importance whatsoever, and I don't even think there's any military there, because I think that whole area is part of the grain deal, and so you're not really allowed to have any military in that area. So I don't really know what Zelensky is talking about, other than he is lying to his people. The victory of Snake Island, the siege of Kiev, the great Kherson counteroffensive, the Great Kharkov counteroffensive, the goat of Kiev and the ghost of Kiev, the Zaporozhye Avenger. Boy, have they come up with a whole lot of narratives. A whole lot. All right, so that was Clown World number one. Actually, I think I have 3 Clown Worlds courtesy of Zelensky. So Zelensky also said that that Putin is now threatened more than me. There are more people who want to kill him, he said in an interview with the Spanish newspaper El Mundo, commenting on Prigozhin's rebellion. There are more people that want to kill Putin than want to kill me. Interesting. So do tell, Mr. Zelensky, who are the people that are after you? I think that would have been an interesting question from the El Mundo journalist, but I doubt that they asked him that question. And finally, Zelensky, he's a bit upset with the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean because, according to Zelensky, he was going to speak at a summit of the EU and the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, the CELAC, but he was blocked from doing so, not by the country in Europe that represents Europe in the summit, which is Spain. Spain was actually more than happy to have Zelensky speak there, but because countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, they blocked Zelensky. They said, we don't want you at this summit. And so Zelensky was very, very upset that he got blocked from speaking at this event. Quote, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez invited me, but some Latin American leaders blocked this invitation. So he was very, very upset. So 3 Clown Worlds, courtesy of Zelensky. Another $3 billion in taxes coming Zelensky's way, courtesy of Ursula von der Leyen. So not a bad day for Zelensky when you weigh everything up. Yes, he's not going to speak at this event, but at least he gets to celebrate Snake Island, and at least he gets to have another $3 billion from the European Union so he can buy more homes. Another $3 billion from the European Union. This very good, very, very good. How they find this money? Accounting error or something else? Mr. President, this money is coming to you from an EU tax, a tax on Russian assets. Oh, tax. Very good idea. I like tax. I like Russian asset tax. I buy many homes. All right, everyone. That is the video. The Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, and Rockfin. Go to the Duran shop. 10% off. Use the code. Good day. Take care.